Good evening. Welcome to Love Talk. I'm Gregory Morgan, and happy to be here with you this afternoon. If you're watching Iranian television and wondering who is this guy that has an English TV show on the Iranian channels, well, I've been here for about 8 years now. The name of the show is Love Talk, and I am the co-founder of a company called Embrace Growth. And you can find out about us, you'll see at the bottom of your screen throughout the show, embracegrowth.com. And there you can find out about myself and my wife, Dr. Azita Sayan, who I'm sure most of you know. And the company that we have is formed in order to do seminars and workshops, these television shows, as well as produce products, books, CDs, and DVDs as a resource for you to deepen your understanding of human relationships, to have more profound, more loving, more fulfilling relationships in your life, in your work, and to develop yourself emotionally, spiritually, financially, in every way possible by using the technology of empowerment, using the technology of really getting to the source of the things that have been stopping you and your relationships in your life and clearing those up, like getting those issues resolved forever so that it's not something that you that haunts you or that you tolerate or put up with or cope with or manage for the rest of your life. We literally break through to the other side of whatever has been stopping you, such that the things that have hindered you and held you back in your lifetime are just simply no longer an issue. And so I'm reaching into my pocket because I'm realizing that my phone did not get shut off and it's vibrating. So the whole company of Embrace Growth, whether it's through our services or the products that we produce, have one aim in mind, and that is truly to leave a legacy of love and empowered communities for future generations. And how we do that, like I said, is through the various seminars and workshops, but you know, even in consulting on movies, we're currently consulting on a movie that's called In Her Honor, and you'll be hearing more about that at some later date when it's appropriate to talk about that. But that's the most I can reveal to you about that now. And honor is a big theme. Honor is a big theme in Embrace Growth, and for the simple fact that when we work with couples, when we work with individuals or couples in our private sessions, one of the things that we notice is the very first thing that actually comes up is that somewhere along the line, a person has given their word or a promise about something, either to themselves, to others, or to their spouse or loved one, and somewhere along the line, they have not honored their word. They have not honored themselves. They've not honored their own personal boundaries. And they have not honored the relationship between them. And ultimately, people begin to dishonor themselves in that we are born into a culture, we're born into a world which is not pulling for honor. It's not pulling for integrity. It is pulling for exactly the opposite. And it's not surprising. There has been eras in time, various eras in time in various cultures in time, in which the ideal of honor, being an honorable man or woman, to live honorably, to honor one's word, to be a person of any stature or have any nobility in certain cultures, one must have a reputation of being honorable. And that is no longer the case in our societies. Most of the societies, it's like we have become individuals, which is a good thing in a relationship, to be what they call individuated. But we have separated ourselves into what I will call an adolescent individuation. It is at the same time very individual, very I'm for me and my opinion and everyone's for themselves. However, totally dependent upon their parents, dependent upon society, dependent upon the company that they work for. In other words, very, very dependent, like an adolescent may be dependent upon the parents that they're rebelling against. You know, like somebody might be dependent upon the company that they're actually rebelling against, or the country that they're rebelling against. So there is a codependent relationship, and the cry for freedom, if you will, the cry for, or the pulling for separation is one that would actually endanger the person asking for the separation. So without getting too complex and into that, the ideal of honor is something that I want to be talking with you about today, and in particularly in terms of how it applies to men in relationships. An honorable man in a relationship gives that relationship about a 300% more chance of not only surviving but prospering and leaving a legacy for future generations, teaching future generations, than if there is, let's say, an honorable woman and a dishonorable man. An honorable man, even if the woman is dishonorable, can still carry the day in most relationships. And I know that doesn't sound like good news for some of you gentlemen out there, and it doesn't sound like good, it may even sound kind of crazy to some of you, what I just said, but that I believe an honorable man can carry the day in a relationship. And so for that reason, I want to talk about honor in terms of the history of honor and the fact that honor is a very localized phenomenon. What may be honorable here may not be honorable in another country. It may be like dishonorable, and vice versa. So the whole ideal of honor is up to interpretation anyhow. And it is also in terms of what is appropriate and timely. So, you know, many things, dark and evil and terrible things, have been done in the name of honor. You know, many foolish and crazy things have been done in the name of honor. Many destructive things have been done in the name of honor. You know, honor can engender a sense of false pride and egotism that it can be quite dangerous and toxic to society, toxic to women, toxic to men, toxic to children, and toxic to future generations. So I want to begin to break all that down and really have not a monologue where I teach you everything that I've learned, but more like a dialogue. So we're going to take a brief break here in a few minutes. And when we come back, I want to open the phone lines so that we can actually have a dialogue. You'll see that there's a number there, an 818 number at the bottom of your screen, and that's the number that calls the studio. It's the number that I'll be answering to have a dialogue with you with regards to how does this conversation about honor apply in your life, and how has it been missing in relationships, and you know, what are some of the things that have been the negative results of a loss of honor? And perhaps what I would really welcome is any stories about where honor perhaps has been restored. Because, you know, there's a famous quote that says, honor is not something that you can find. Honor cannot be found, but it can be lost. So, you know, if we cut you open and looked inside, we wouldn't find anything called honor in there. If we looked through your life and your possessions and everything after you're gone, we wouldn't find anything that you could call honor. We would only find symbols of honor. We would only find the results of honor. And so honor is like electricity. It's like the wind. You don't see it, and yet you know when it's there, and you know when it's not there. So let's talk about how it has worked in your life, how when it has been missing, either in yourself or in others, what has been the cost of that? And let's see if we can begin a conversation in our lives here on this show today called Love Talk about honor and integrity. Okay? So let's take a brief break. We'll be back in about 5 or 6 minutes, and I'll open the phone lines, and I'd love to hear what you have to say or your questions about honor and integrity. Welcome back to Love Talk. I'm Gregory Morgan, and you're watching a live broadcast. That is, if you're watching on Monday, what is today? The 28th. If you're watching on Monday, January 28th, 2013, you're watching a live broadcast. And if otherwise, you're watching the show being repeated. And today I'm talking about honor and integrity and the decline of the American male, the decline of manhood in Western cultures, and the disintegration of our social order, and by virtue of the disintegration of our bonds with the opposite sex, our marriages, our families that are a function of not just our physical, sexual, emotional attraction to another person. That may be what has people get together in relationships, no doubt about it. However, what keeps relationships together, what has relationships endure over time and stand the tests of financial troubles, raising children, religious and cultural differences, the everyday grind of working and hardly ever seeing each other or being too exhausted to even go on a vacation. Those kinds of challenges arise in every relationship that lasts a lifetime. If you're in a relationship that is going to last a lifetime, last over the years, and leave some kind of a legacy that is honorable, a legacy that people will be proud of, a legacy that lasts beyond your lifetime and touches the lives of future generations for hundreds, maybe thousands or millions of people who your life could touch, then honor and integrity enter into the question. Without honor and integrity, you can have all of the emotional attraction, sexual attraction, spiritual agreement, financial understandings that you want. Ultimately, there will be a breakdown in the very fabric of what holds that relationship together, because honor and integrity is not something that is fixed or static. Honor and integrity means doing the right thing at the right time, using common sense, in other words, using your being present, aware, and conscious of the consequences of your actions. All of those things are part of honor and integrity. It's wholly possible that honor and integrity may call for you to break the rules sometimes, the rules of society or the rules of your caste or club or religion or whatever it is that you belong to that has rules. Rules are related to obedience to an order, okay? Rules have to do with keeping the order of things such so that people can operate within an organized fashion. We joke about when we go to Europe or something, and Europeans joke about when they come to America. In America, I'll say in California, those little yellow lines on the road, those little white lines and stripes, they actually are rules. You see, they mean something, and if you don't mind those rules, well, then you can get stopped and get a ticket or any number of other consequences that could happen to you, you see. So it's not just a question of having honor and integrity. If you're going to drive a car and not wreck into other people and have some order in the society and in the traffic flow, then it's important to mind the rules. Sometimes you have to mind the rules, yes? We joke because, we've been to countries in Europe and in the Mideast where, It's as if the stripes on the road were a suggestion. The red light was, we recommend that you slow down and stop. We're suggesting that maybe some other cars might be coming. So it's kind of funny because there's, over there, in a lot of places, people just drive however they drive, and they sort of mind the rules, but they kind of make up their own rules as they go on. And in that society, in that culture, in that understanding, that has integrity, you see. I'm amazed because it's as if nobody's minding the rules, and yet everybody's managing to get where they're going and not crash into each other most of the time. And so I only bring up this point about the traffic and such to make a point, and that is that what has honor and what has integrity doesn't necessarily always mean minding the rules to the letter. Sometimes what has honor and what has integrity is unspoken agreements are not agreements, they're assumptions. And in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, the practice that I use, that's called a mind read. And a mind read is where you suppose that you know what somebody else is thinking, but you don't check it out. You assume that you know what somebody meant to say or was meaning, but you don't verify it. So one of the things that we recommend in NLP is specific language. So you might say to someone, if you were in a conversation and you had what we call a mind read, you might say, when you said that, I think you meant this. Am I right? That would just be verifying that what you mind read was actually true, was actually what was intended in the other person's speech. Because in neuro-linguistic programming, you're literally reprogramming or repatterning the thinking process and the sequence and order of how they process a reality based on language. That's the linguistic part, neuro-linguistic programming. So your language must be very specific, and you cannot assume that somebody knows what you're talking about. Same is true in relationships, whether they're a short-term recreational relationship. Notice that I was very specific about how I articulated short-term, meaning it's not for a lifetime, it's for a short time. A short time could be 6 weeks, 6 months, 9 weeks, 3 years, but it's still a short term. Recreational means, hey, we're here to enjoy ourselves, to have fun, to recreate. Okay, recreation means to recreate. So when you go on a vacation to have some recreation, you're literally recreating yourself. You're building yourself back up. You're letting old things go. You're creating newly, new energy, new insights, new desires, new motivations to move forward. So recreational means exactly that. And so a short-term recreational relationship is for the purpose of practicing your relationship skills, getting better at whatever it is that you do, whatever it is that you have or bring to the table or offer, that you get better at that, that you improve that. Excuse me. A lot of people make the mistake these days, and I suppose they always have, of entering into a short-term recreational relationship and then trying to turn that relationship into a long-term committed relationship. And the likelihood of that happening is very narrow. And I don't say that because I want it to be that way. I say that because it's my observation from dealing with thousands of people now that, and from having tried to do this myself, that moving from a short-term recreational relationship to a long-term committed relationship, while it may last longer, seldom, if ever, lasts a lifetime. And if it does, then there's a certain amount of suffering involved, and people are actually enduring the relationship by the end of it. So it's like you survived your relationship rather than you were alive all your life and enjoying and being fulfilled in your relationships. So short-term recreational relationships are simply for that. There's no dishonor in that. That can be a that could be a relationship that has integrity. Hey, listen, we're only together for a while. Let's enjoy the time that we're together. I'm going to give my best while we're together. You know, I want your best. Let's make the time that we have together be fun, enlightening, enlivening, and enriching. And when it starts to go bad, hey, let's move on. Okay, so that has integrity. It may not be a part of the outspoken, acknowledged Iranian culture. However, it's going on anyhow. It's just unspoken. And because it is unspoken, because everybody's pretending that this is an engagement or this is something else, they're pretending that it has much more meaning and depth and longevity than it actually ever does, then unfortunately people make the mistake of getting married and having children and then finding out that their short-term recreational relationship was really that, short-term and not very recreational. In fact, it could be quite destructive if you try to turn a short-term recreational relationship into a long-term committed relationship. There's no integrity in it. And what does not have integrity is destined to disintegrate. The word integrate, is in the word disintegrate. If it has no integrity in the first place, it will disintegrate. And that's just a question of time. It's not if it will, it's a question of when it will. And so a lot of people spend a lot of time and energy, both in our seminars and workshops, in our private sessions at our office, over the phone, Skype, attempting to repair disintegrating relationships that probably never should have gotten together in the first place in some cases, and in other cases, mostly what it's about. And the reason we're speaking about honor and integrity today is that good people with good intentions set out with no integrity to create something that requires integrity. It requires honor. It requires giving your word and keeping your word no matter what. It requires a constant growing and developing within oneself. You can't just park yourself, you know, at age 25 and say, okay, I'm done growing, you know, and then by the time you're 45, you wonder why you still have adolescent wants and needs and desires that have never been fulfilled, and now you're frustrated. And then if you're a man, or a woman, really, too, you have what they call a midlife crisis. Now, it's rarely a crisis for the person having it. It's usually a crisis for everybody else. A crisis for the people, for their employees or their employer, a crisis for their kids, and a crisis for their wives, and usually a crisis for their bank account as well. Yes, midlife crisis is called a crisis because it causes a breakdown in orderly systems that other people have begun to count upon. So you may find yourself in one of those situations right now. You may find yourself in a situation where you're maybe in your 40s or 50s, and you're going, wow, I've just spent the last 20 years of my life building a business, building a family, building a relationship, and yet I feel empty inside. I feel like there's nothing, the future. You know, if I have to spend another 40 years living like this, if the rest of my life is going to look like this, I don't want it. I find many men in the midlife range that are like that, and many women as well. A lot of people got married too early, and they got married for the wrong reasons. Sometimes the reasons were your family made you do it, or wanted you to do it, or recommended that you do it, or you had social pressure to do it, or because you wanted to get away from your family and this was your way out. You know, there's a lot of reasons that people get married early. But I want to point out something to you in this culture that I've run into a number of times. And, you know, it's not just the Iranian culture, but, you know, the American culture as well, however, less so. And that is that your brain stem, your nervous system, and your brain, your bones, you're not done growing until you're in your early to mid-20s. And for men, it's more like in their later 20s, like 27 or so, okay? You're still not even an adult yet until you're in your mid to later 20s, and to assume the position of being an adult and being in charge of children and their future is irresponsible as far as I'm concerned. It has no integrity. And to have integrity, from my viewpoint, would be to do everything possible to assure that if you're going to be responsible for somebody else's life and all of the many lives that they will touch, that you make sure you win. You make sure that the cards are stacked in your favor. And that doesn't mean that mom and dad's backing you with a good bank account, or that you've got some half-finished degree in your pocket that you just graduated from. No, it means that you know that you have the resources and the wherewithal, not just financially, but mentally, spiritually, emotionally, that you are prepared to deal with whatever life will throw at you, and that you have a very good chance of winning whatever those struggles are. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't win every battle that you fight. You know, nobody knows that they'll win every battle that they fight, but you have mastered your life enough to know that you have a very good chance of being successful, both as a husband and a wife, because you've spent some time together, and you've seen that, well, not only have you got a capacity to work things out, but that you're going to continue to develop that capacity, because that's another thing that happens in relationships. I see it happening all the time, where one person wants to grow and develop and do seminars and workshops and continue growing for their entire life, and the other person is kind of like, no, I'm done, I'm not interested in that, and they stay stuck, and then they begin to hold the other person back. The other person's always sort of dragging them to seminars or workshops, or trying to get them to go to therapy or read a book or something. But they go, no, not interested in that, that's for you, go ahead. And then the gap between them becomes so vast that, yes, of course, naturally, eventually it will break down. The relationship will break down, and the communication will break down. The affinity, the love, the affection for each other begins to break down. And so eventually they find themselves living in two separate realities. And when you're living in two separate realities from the person that you're married to, the chances of you having an affair, the chances of you going elsewhere to try to find some happiness or joy or fulfillment in your life is increased exponentially. Anyhow, there's callers that are starting to call in. I'm going to go ahead and take some calls. That's just a dead line that's blinking? Okay. If you were one of the callers that were on the line, go ahead and call back. Maybe you were on hold for too long. And I'd love to take your questions and have a dialogue with you if you want to talk about what we're talking about here today: relationships, honor, and integrity. So in my research about honor, I realized that honor has gotten sort of a bad rap and that these days in Western cultures and modern cultures, mostly when they talk about honor, they're sort of almost referring to it jokingly. Okay, the lines have lit back up again. I'm going to go ahead and take the calls. Hello, this is Gregory. You're live on the air with Love Talk.
Yes, good evening to you. Thank you so much for your wonderful program. Gregory, I have a question from, from you as an American about Iranian culture.
Yes.
One of the characteristics of Iranian culture is that we talk indirect. I don't know why. Even the relationship between husband and wife is indirect. The relationship between father and children is indirect. Mother and children is indirect. Friendship is so indirect. we give the message indirectly and expect the hearer receive it directly. And I don't know how do you interpret that? What causes a person to not be so direct and always, try to give the message indirectly, no matter how important this message is? But I don't know, maybe there is some fear involved in that. I would like to know your opinion.
Well, I think we're talking about, if I was to put a name on it, I would call it Torof, yes?
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
Torof.
Tarof?
Yes.
It's not Tarof. No.
No, you're
Tarof.
talking, it's not that.
It's
Okay.
No, it's not Tarof. It's even if the father wants to give a message to the son or
Okay.
daughter, either he goes via mother or some relatives, or even if he tries to say it, he does not address it directly. It's always...
Can you give me an example so I can be like on the same page as you? Like, is there an example in your own life that you could actually tell me so I can like maybe get a sense of what it is that you're talking about then?
They try to maybe do things in...
Well, you're kind of doing it now by saying they, right? As if somebody else is doing it. So let's talk about you. Yeah, let's talk about you. What happened in your life that you have this question? Like my husband, my brother, my son, me. Like, let's talk about what happened that has you have this question, so that instead of it being them, it's at home with you. So then we can...
An example, like if somebody does not want to go to this particular party,
somebody who didn't want to go to a party.
Uses instead of saying, I do not really enjoy what's going on. Whenever we get together, the conversation is not pleasant, or you say something that you're not honoring me or you don't respect me, something like that. But they always go, around the bushes to give an indirect message, and they think that the person should get the hint. They should get the message directly.
Know. Yes.
But they don't have I'm talking about the Persian culture. I don't know, we don't have the guts to be straightforward. I see that more in other culture, like American culture, European culture, that they're very straightforward. They talk to you black and white. And I really appreciate that.
Me
because
too.
Then you know
where you stand.
Is. But in our culture, everything is indirect.
Yes. I believe it has, and I just want to point out to you for your own sake, okay, that even though I tried to get you to talk about yourself and your life, you insisted on keeping it theoretical instead of personal, keeping it objective rather than subjective, and talking about them out there as if they were doing it, rather than talking about what's happening in your own family and your own life on a day-to-day basis. So I just want to point that out to you.
I do not have any problem.
Nobody in your life ever did this, so that's why you're calling me about it?
No. But I have problem with my own culture.
Yeah, I know you do.
It is.
Right. And there are specific people that you're thinking of and that you have in mind when you're talking about this. And I just wanted to point that out to you, that it's almost impossible. Listen, 95% of my friends and relationships are Iranians these days because I'm married to an Iranian woman and we get invited to a lot of Iranian stuff and I'm on Iranian TV. So, it stands to reason. So I totally understand what you're talking about. And I totally appreciate when people are very direct. I come from a culture where if you don't say what it is that you're thinking, they'll call you on that. They'll actually point it out to you and say, I think you mean this, is that right? They'll actually want to get it straight and keep it simple. I believe from my research that being a culture that in which in ancient times as well as in modern times, you could basically be, beheaded, off with their head, if you said the wrong thing, or if you addressed the wrong person indirectly, if you weren't, and there were certain people you weren't even supposed to look them in the eye. Yes? Am I right?
Our culture doesn't look into an eye directly.
Yes, I know. Yeah, and so when in that kind of a culture, the language will always be evasive. In other words, it is very, 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 very deeply ingrained in you and in your culture because you were raised. Who you learned language from was your parents, who learned it from their parents and so forth. And so it goes back to this sort of evasive, never say what you actually mean. In fact, in Iran right now, there are people watching this show who could get in trouble for watching this show. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. At home, the girls wear makeup and everybody drinks and smokes and does whatever they do, and then when they go outside, they dress like a pious Muslim. Right? They cover themselves up and everything. So it's a culture in which how you are outside with everybody else is very different from than how you are inside. Yes?
So that means
so you never really communicate
not honest with themselves,
publicly.
Right?
Yeah, well,
we say
maybe,
that they cannot be honest with themselves, and they are afraid of their own feelings.
Well, and you can't be honest with the people out there because you don't know who's watching, who's reporting, who's whatever, right? There are morality police. There are people who actually watch and report other people. In a culture like that, how are you supposed to just say it like it is? How are you supposed to just speak up and say your mind? You're not supposed to, and that is enforced physically and violently, if necessary. You know it and I know it. It's enforced by cultural pressure, it's social pressure, religious pressure, and even governmental pressure. And you can actually feel some physical pressure, like being punished if you're too straightforward. So of course people are not going to be straightforward in their way of carrying themselves, in their way of addressing, in their way of looking. It's just it's not.
Causes a lot of confusion. I mean,
well, yes.
If the guy is indirect and the girl is also indirect, or two friends are so indirect, both of them, I don't know how they can have a good, honest, relationship, friendship going on.
Listen, I have a great relationship with my wife. We've been together for about 15 years now. She's about if you know my wife, you know she's about as straightforward as they come, right? She's very direct and very straightforward. And yet, even in our relationship, I've had to learn to interpret certain things. Like, for example, the light in the bathroom went out. That means change the light bulb right now. If I interpret what she really means, I've learned at times that, the light in the bathroom went out, that means change the light bulb right now. Wouldn't it be great to go out to dinner tonight after work? Means you haven't made reservations yet? Yeah, so there's some interpretation that is necessary, and I think that's probably true in all relationships to a certain extent. But I hear what you're saying. It can be very troublesome, cause a lot of confusion. It causes confusion even in my own family. I've laughed before where I've had my mother-in-law over. I know that my mother-in-law loves watermelon. I see her buy them. I see her cut it up. I know that it's delicious to her. She loves watermelon. So when she's here, I always go buy watermelon and I cut it up exactly like she does, and I put it in a bowl and I keep it in the icebox. And when she comes, I say, Mama June, would you please have some watermelon? She's like, no, I couldn't. And I'm like, but wait, I know you like watermelon. No, if you have some, maybe later I'll have some. And I'm like, no, I don't want any, I got it for you. No, I couldn't. No, you go ahead. And I'm like, don't do this to me. I got the watermelon for you. Eat it, right? So I, it's so cute because she comes from a culture and a generation in which, you know, that's, you never say exactly like, oh yes, I'd love some watermelon, please give it to me now, you know? Are you there?
Yes, yes, I'm
Yeah.
here. Sometimes it causes so
Yeah,
much
I got it.
confusion because the person is not honest with himself or herself,
Yeah.
and says something indirectly, and they expect you to know, even between husband and wife, like saying that, oh, you know me so long, you should have known by now that what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You should have, well, although that they do not utter it, but they expect you to know it, what they want,
Mm-hmm.
or what they meant.
Yep, I got trained very early in my relationship where
Problem
I
with
think we were
that.
on a long trip and I got hungry and we weren't going to be anywhere where there was a restaurant for a long time. We were on a long road trip. And so we came to this filling station that had some kind of fast food. It wasn't all that great, but it was like a fast food in there. And so I stopped to get gas and I told my wife, I'm going to go in there and get, you know, some French fries or something. Would you like some? She goes, no, right? So I came back with my French fries, my stuff, and she said, what, you didn't get me any? And that's when I learned that no doesn't necessarily mean no, right? It's like, you better not come back without French fries, right? So I'm like, here, you know, it was funny.
Thank you so much.
You know, it's, you know, you just got to laugh at it. Sometimes it's very painful, though. I understand. Sometimes it can be very painful. And so as an adult, you and I, we're responsible for making sure that our communications are clear and understood,
Yes.
and that we understood other people's. And so that, if, you know, I made the joke about the mind read earlier, right? That in NLP we say, when you said that, I think you meant this, am I right? Check it out. Try that. Say, you said this, I think it means this. Is that what you meant? That's being responsible for communication. If the person still is evasive, you know, you need to be responsible for being clear about what is it that you want to communicate with me. Because I'm going to tell you something. When communication breaks down, relationships, you can think of it like a triad or a triangle. Communication, affinity, and reality. What keeps you living in the same reality as another person that you're in relationship with is your communication with them, upon which your affinity, or affinity being your kind, wonderful, warm, loving feelings, are dependent. If communication goes away, your affinity can collapse, and then you begin to live in a different reality from each other. You're in one world, they're in another. They said this, they thought you got it, you thought they meant this, you thought you understood, and now you're living in two separate worlds. No affinity possible, and no communication. So yeah, it's vitally important to maintain clear communication with people if you want to maintain love and affection. You can't expect to have no communication and love and affection. It doesn't work that way. Got it?
Thank you so much. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for calling. Bye. So the phone lines are open. I want to talk about honor and integrity today, and I was talking about the really the history of honor. You know, has evolved over the centuries. It was not even an idea that was always around, if you will. It was always something in the beginning, and still to this day, that was related to manhood. In the early societies, one's honor was related to one's ability to fight off an enemy, to win at battle, to be victorious, to stand with other warriors, other fighters, other defenders, and push back or defend your territory, push back invaders, or to, in some cases, invade. So if you think about it, honor belonged only to the ones in that clan. In other words, The enemy didn't consider you honorable. Only the people in your clan considered you honorable if you won a battle. So battles, swords, every time we talk about honor, we see symbols of swords and shields and warriors. It's always been related to fighting and even killing, even invading, and doing what would be considered today dishonorable in many cultures. And yet honor was tied up with that from the very beginning. So honor has evolved, and you know, I noticed that somebody called on the line. You're welcome to call back. I'll take your call. As people evolved and fighting with swords and guns and all of that stuff, and really the gun culture shifted the meaning of honor, because in the samurai world and in the world of chivalrous knights, many disputes were settled on the battlefield, often referred to as the field of honor. They were settled by whoever won. Now, did it mean the guy was truly, by today's interpretation, does it mean he was honorable? Not necessarily. Maybe he was a better swordsman. Maybe he practiced more. Maybe he was smarter, or sharper, or faster, or younger, right? Doesn't necessarily mean that the most honorable man won. But when questions of honor came up, they were often settled with the sword. And so in a primitive society, in a more primitive culture, that's how things were decided, and that gave the interpretation or the meaning of the word honor. Later, men started shooting with pistols, yes? And so there were duels, and if a man's honor was insulted, and notice it's always the men that are fighting about honor, yes? So if a man's honor was insulted in some way or fashion, then they would go out onto the field of honor, and shoot at each other with pistols, you know? Now, the truth is, historically, they often did not shoot to kill. Often wounding your opponent, or even just showing up and firing. Sometimes they would purposely miss. The point being that I'm willing to die for my honor. And the conversation back in those days, and still today, was that honor not worth dying for was not honor at all. That was the underlying unspoken, well, often spoken historical meaning up to that point, up to the, let's say, the Victorian age, that honor was worth dying for. Without honor was not worth living. So as you can see, it has the meaning of honor has evolved at that very same period of time that men were dueling with pistols in Europe and in the Western world. You know, men were still dueling with swords, and questions of honor were still settled in Japan and in the feudal eras by the sword. And even to the point that a man who had dishonored his master or dishonored his tribe or dishonored his family name was expected to literally kill himself with a short sword, commit seppuku, as the samurai word for it, as a way of restoring honor to his name. It was an honorable way to die. Therefore, whatever dishonor you did was erased by this. So even though people would do extremely dishonorable things, they could lie, cheat, steal, do whatever, or be accused of being dishonorable by their master, and the only thing to do would be to commit seppuku in order to restore one's family name, in order to restore honor to one's life, to one's legacy. As you can see, we've evolved, and then as it eventually became illegal in Europe and elsewhere, even though people continued to do it for a while, it became illegal to settle duels with pistols. It's just like, okay, you guys cut it out, stop shooting each other. This is no longer cool. We have evolved. And so gentlemen began to settle their disputes through an intellectual discourse, whether it be a lawsuit or a discourse of some sort, usually in a court of law, in which one's honor could be decided by what was written in the law. So we began to allow for dishonorable behavior as long as it was settled through intellectual dispute. That changed the meaning and the content of honor, and it also meant that people who had money now could have more honor because they could buy a better lawyer, or they could pay a judge, or they could own more property than the person accusing them of being dishonorable. And so that dispute was often just settled by he who had the most stuff won. And that's carried forward in today. There's, we talk about horizontal honor, that is the honor between two men. The honor between two men in which they communicate and they come to an understanding. And listen, sometimes I've been around men all my life, and sometimes men, when they're settling an honorable dispute, it gets loud. It gets loud. There may be pushing, shoving, shouting, all kinds of stuff like that. That happens. Men communicate like that. I consider that healthy personally. When men get loud and push and shove and come to an understanding, if you know men, like I know men, very often those men go off and become good friends. Those men say, okay, now that we've got that out of our system, they've earned each other's respect. Often that's as far as it goes with men. I kind of draw the line when they start inflicting blows that could eventually become injurious or even death-dealing blows. People start punching each other in the head or hitting each other with objects or taking out some kind of a weapon to settle an honor dispute. Then they have regressed into a more primitive state, and the likelihood of resolving it honorably has dissipated. It's no longer valid. So whoever wins that fight is probably not going to be the most honorable one. It's going to be the one who managed to hurt the other one the most. And so by today's standards, that's no longer valid. That's no longer a valid resolution, and it's no longer a valid description of what's honorable. And then we talk about vertical honor. We talk about an honor that may be bestowed upon you by a higher authority. So when somebody is honored, gets an honorary degree, or someone is honored for their life's achievements and society honors them, meaning they lift them up, you are now in another strata, another atmosphere, another level of society. You have been lifted up by a higher authority, or by the higher authority of your peers. Your peers may collectively get together and say, you're the best, you're our leader. We honor you as somebody who is, it happens in companies a lot, the best salesman of the year, or in other words, you have been vertically lifted. That is another way of honoring people or gaining honor. Many people have continued this tradition for forever of gaining honor in the world and in society by doing good, by doing good for other people, by standing for something. Again, in the past, it was battles fought on the battlefield, showing bravery, showing selfless self-sacrifice, showing the willingness to die for others and do whatever it takes to help others. These kinds of acts, these kinds of attitudes, this calls forth something in humanity that is honorable and does require recognition. But here's Here's the thing that's troubling as far as relationships is concerned, as far as the future of our society and our culture is concerned. Here's something that I find extremely troubling, and that is this. That somewhere in the last 40 to 50 years, the idea of self-sacrifice, the idea of bravery, the idea of giving of oneself for the sake of the greater good has moved into the background of our thinking. It's moved into the background of our culture and what we teach our children, and more in the foreground, what's up front is every man for himself, every man or woman for himself. Take care of your family, your kids, yourself, your clique, your tribe, your group. In other words, the love of humanity, which is at the foundation or the basis of giving up one's individual wants, needs, and desires for the greater good, that kind of heroism, that kind of honor has almost disappeared from our language. In fact, today is even thought of as being kind of foolish, kind of stupid, kind of like laughable. Why would you do that? Nobody cares anymore. So in a world where there's no shame, in a world where people are not ashamed to lie, cheat, steal, run around half naked, cheat in their businesses, cheat in their relationships, cheat on their diet, cheat in their finances, cheat on their taxes. In other words, where cheating and being dishonorable is the order of the day, and you're kind of crazy or silly if you don't do that. You're almost seen as somebody who is foolish if you insist on having integrity, if you insist on having honor. People aren't necessarily going to elevate you, like we talked about vertical honor. They're not going to necessarily be lifted up. Hey, this is a really honorable person that will not compromise, who does things right, even when nobody's watching, even when nobody cares, even when he's the last or only person that cares about what's right and what's good and what's for the best of all concerned. Nobody's going to lift you up for that. Not in this world, not in this society, not in the culture today. And if that's already happening now with you and me today, right now, look around in your world. Look around in your schools, in your jobs, in your careers. Look in your own company. Look in your own family. How many people are really authentically lifted up and acknowledged publicly and given a higher status in life, a higher responsibility in life for doing the right thing, just because it was the right thing to do, regardless of the rules, regardless of the cost. How many people today that you can identify are true heroes and have been acknowledged as such? It's rare to find. It's rare to find. And how many times have you, personally, done the right thing? Really, you knew it was the right thing and you did it, whether nobody knew, nobody was watching, nobody would even find out that you did the right thing, that you even had a choice that you could have faced. You could have taken the other way and gotten off easier, cheaper, freer, but it would have been against your own personal sense of integrity. How many times have you made a choice to do the right thing, even when nobody else knew, only to be laughed at, criticized, put down, or maybe even had to pay for someone else because you did the right thing? It's a thankless job in this world, in this society today, to have honor and integrity, and yet that's what I'm pulling for. That's what I believe is the fabric that has our society, that has our families, that has our religious institutions, that have our educational institutions be coherent and work in an orderly fashion, is honor and integrity. And when that starts to break down, and particularly, ladies and gentlemen, when that starts to break down amongst the women folks, when women no longer care about honor, history has shown us over and over again, if you study anthropology, if you study cultures and societies and civilizations, what you will see is civilizations in which the women no longer cared about honor and integrity. In other words, the women started to sell out their own honor, sell out their own integrity. Those societies inevitably collapsed and were erased from history, never to return to their former strength. Entire empires have collapsed. When the morality of women is flushed down the toilet, the entire society is soon to follow. Women are the holders of a higher morality. Naturally, biologically, nature has given you the ability to cause and generate and create and nourish life all with your own body. You come with your own food supply. You can give birth and nurture a child to the point where it can actually begin to take care of itself and eventually make a difference in the world, go out and change the world. Women have this ability, and for that reason, they are more selective in their mating. They're more selective sexually. They're more selective morally. In other words, they have a tendency to do the right thing in favor of what will be most beneficial for the future. They are future-oriented. Women are looking out into the future and managing themselves ethically, morally, to have the greatest outcome for the future. When women begin to lose that focus, that future focus that gives them the moral high ground, that gives them the ethical high ground, when they begin to lose that focus and sell that out for their own personal gain and pleasure or satisfaction or security here, now, in the future, here, now, in the present, there's what I call the present, and then there's the immediate future, meaning like what's going to happen next week, next month. When the lifelong future vision of women gets reduced to just what's going to happen, how do I get by now, it could be said that that woman is in a survival mode. And in a survival mode, you may not like hearing this, but women have no honor. Women are dishonorable when they're in a survival mode. They'll cut your throat. They do not worry about honor when they're worried about survival. Okay? Men, on the other hand, well, even in survival mode, if they are honorable to begin with, if they have the image and it could be said that the part of men that is honorable is actually fed by and informed by their love of femininity, their love of what is sensual and beautiful and soft and receptive and lovely and good. A man's love for that, a man's natural sense of wanting to protect and preserve what is good and beautiful and truthful, and has a long-term futuristic vision greater than his own, very often. In his humility and his masculine love of the feminine, he will be honorable. So even in survival mode, even when his life is at stake, even when it looks like he's about to die, a man can still choose to do the honorable thing, and very often will. So for this reason, I say, this is why I give workshops called Honor, Integrity, and Mastery, and they're for men only. I give Honor, Integrity, and Mastery workshops for men. I believe it is the most important subject that we could possibly talk about as men. When men gather together in the name of or for the sake of increasing their own knowledge, and experience of being honorable, of having integrity, and of mastering those distinctions. And by mastering, I mean humbly taking on the challenge of being honorable and preserving integrity for the rest of your life. That's what a master does. It doesn't mean, oh, I've now achieved honor and integrity forever. No, that's like thinking that you could, shine your car so perfectly you'll never have to shine it again, or fill up your gas tank so full that you'll never have to fill it up again. No, honor and integrity is an ongoing battle that we must face every day, and we face it alone as men for the most part. My purpose in creating communities of honor and integrity and of promoting this ideal is that the best thing a man could possibly do is to ally himself, to join himself with men of honor and integrity, and to have them in his life every day. I do, and I need them personally. Whenever I can't straighten myself up, I have men that I can call and go, look, I'm thinking this, I'm doing that, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. What's the right thing? And it doesn't take long. And sometimes I just have to think about what would they say if I talk to them, and that'll straighten me out. Honor and integrity is not something that you master and you never have to look at it again. It's something that you go about correcting and continuing every day. I believe that it is vitally important for men to do this. And it is even more important because without honor and integrity, we cannot provide and protect the women and children that we love. The women and children that are the future, and that are the heartfelt reason that we do all the things that we do as men. The real reason that we're successful, the real reason that we are protective, the real reason that we want to be better men is for the women and children. For ourselves, if there was just men around, we probably wouldn't bother shaving or even wearing clothes, we would just, I don't know what men would do if there were no women and children around, but it wouldn't be pretty, okay? So we make the world a beautiful place so that we can have women and children to enjoy it with us, and so that we earn the right, both the self-respect but the respect of others. So to summarize, when shame is lost, honor is lost. No shame, no honor. If you're trying to raise your children without ever shaming them because some Dr. Spock in the 60s wrote a book that it was not right to shame children and that it damaged them, look around at society, look around at what's happened in the last 40 to 50 years. Shame disappeared, and so did honor along with it. So, that's my show for today. That's my little talk about honor and integrity. This coming weekend, I am giving the Advanced Honor, Integrity, and Mastery Workshop here in Los Angeles from February 1st through the 3rd. It is only open to the graduates of my Honor, Integrity, and Mastery program. There have been 5 of those so far, and the men who are graduates of that program are welcome to sign up for this workshop that's coming up this weekend. It'll be here in Los Angeles. If you want to find out about it, go to embracegrowth.com or call the office. And if you'd like to find out about our women-only workshops, our books, CDs, DVDs, I highly recommend that you go to embracegrowth.com. There is a VIP list. Join our VIP list. I think it says at the bottom of each page. And that'll put you on a mailing list that from time to time we will keep you informed of new products and services that we have, and you can always find out about our seminars and workshops, which are happening all over the world. This year we're going to be in London, Dubai, Toronto, and Australia, as well as Los Angeles, of course. All right, that's the end of my time. Thank you for watching. I'm Gregory Morgan. You have been watching Love Talk.